Okay, welcome back to episode 9 of the Ape and Bird Show. It's been an interesting week in the NFT world. And we've done very little research once again, but we're here to talk all about it. How are you going, Greg?
Going well, Steve. Going well. Nice to see a little bit of green on the board over the last couple of days.
Yeah, it has been. I think this morning I woke up, as I was going to bed last night, Bitcoin and ETH were starting to pump. So I think it was about 20,400 or 500. And yeah, then this morning woke up 21.6. Like, okay, not bad. We might have some life left in the market yet. I still think this is probably, what do they call it, a bear trap or a bull trap? Probably a bull trap. I still see prices going lower. Hope they don't, but still think we're in for a bit of hurt. But of course, we're not crypto traders. We have no idea where the market's going. We just love NFTs, and that's what we're talking about. Should we get the your favorite little spiel out of the way early?
Well, we can. I don't have it in front of me here, so it's going to take me about 15 seconds to pull it up. But
and another 3 minutes to read it out.
It's all about, this is really just this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Steve or I are not financial advisors. So anything you hear on today's show and any future show, again, is just for educational and entertainment purposes only. So with that out of the way, Steve, what are we going to kick off with?
Okay, so we've already talked about the mini rally. We do have dot points this week, so we're upgrading every week. But yeah, we talked about the mini rally over the last few days, and we've also seen that in the NFT market. So a few more sales trickling in, and we will get to those sales later on. We're going to try to keep this one really tight, so like 40 minutes, not to bore you all too much. So let's start with probably, I'm a big ape guy, so we can start with the other side, testing. So this week, at a very Australia-friendly time of, I think, 2 a.m., they had the testing of the other side. Now, the other side is their metaverse. So we've all bought our other deeds land for ridiculous amounts of money at the time. Pretty much 2 ETH in gas fees, plus I think it was 328 coin for each plot. And ApeCoin was about $20 a coin at the time. So a very expensive lesson in markets there, but they have come back recently. But the test this week was to see if the world they're building is going to be able to hold thousands of people at once. And what it is a desktop-based, pretty much a Unity or Unreal, a game engine world that you can walk around in with your avatar, talk to people, play games, and so on. But everything in this space is 3 to 5 years at the earliest away. So this was a first test just to see if the servers could handle that many people in one spot at one time. Of course, they only opened it up to Americans and I think a few Europeans. Us Aussies, as always, get shafted. We're not cared about at the moment in the NFT world. So I didn't bother getting up at 2 a.m. to watch people running around. I will say what Bored Ape Yacht Club has done, I think, well, is they know their core competencies and they outsource so much stuff. So pretty much everything you've seen them release has been outsourced. So we saw the Mutant and Bored Ape iOS and Android game earlier, late last year, I think it was. That was just a outsourced dev company that created that for them. I'm sure Ape Fest is another marketing agency that does everything there. All their clothing, definitely outsourced, and we'll talk about that later. And the other side is Improbable, which is a UK company, and they've been working on this tech for years, maybe a decade. I haven't looked far enough into them. My issue is I'm hoping they own some equity in this company as well. I'm not sure if they do, but I believe they're both backed by A16Z or whatever VC company has invested. So there is overlap there. But apparently it went well. It was a lot of fun. I think one of the cool things that I saw in there was that if you're talking, normally it's just a big mess if 1,000 people are talking. If someone's closer to you, you can hear them a lot clearer than someone further away. So that was cool. It was all basic avatars. They weren't apes. There was a white screen. There was no graphics or anything like that. But they did a few tests, and it all seemed to go well. And it's like, for most people, if you're looking from the outside, you're like, big deal. But it's a great first step in the metaverse. And if we are going to have this world like Ready Player One, these are the sort of steps we need to go through. Did you look into it? What did you think, Greg?
Yeah, speaking of building, have you got a neighbour doing some building next door, Steve? We can hear some banging.
Sorry. Yeah, there's houses going up all around me. We should talk about the housing market.
Okay. Yeah, we can hear quite a bit of banging there. But yeah, look, I didn't do the testing myself, but I think just the overall sentiment I saw on Twitter yesterday was positive. If you look at, I think the only thing that was a potential outcome yesterday was the sentiment was bad, and we might have seen a bit of a drop in floor price on the other deeds, but we sort of saw a mini pump for a couple of hours, I would say, and then sort of a consolidation. I think we're sitting around 2.8, 2.9 at the moment, which has sort of been steady probably for the last week or so. But I mean, yeah, the sentiment was good. I'm not a huge gamer myself. A lot of the sort of terminology and metrics that a lot of people were throwing around yesterday on Twitter around why they thought it was important does go over my head to a degree. But I would say, overall, similar to you for the space, like I'd much prefer to be seeing positive sentiment from people that are in tune with the gaming community rather than negative, because I think particularly in this particular market, we don't want to be seeing something that, is going backwards. So I think a tick for Yuga, a tick for the overall ecosystem.
Yeah, and in this market, the only possibility was probably a downside if it did stuff up completely, because nothing you release right now or do well is going to have all that much of an impact on the market when everyone's scared. So well done there, but we can probably move on to other ape news. Actually, I've got a box here for those watching full of, oh no, not that one, there's another one below, full of ape merchandise. So we all spent copious amounts of money on ape merchandise with the ape token, probably, 3 months ago. I ended up buying 3 lots. I would have spent close to 10,000 US on across 3 different apes, the NFTs one and a few of my own as well. And I received the first lot, which were 2 boxes that were sent via Australia Post here. And that came to the post office box, no problem, picked them up. Then I got a call from UPS yesterday on a second one that said I owe $310 in fees. And I've got a third one coming that I'm hoping it goes through Australia Post, but I'm assuming it's going to be UPS as well, so I'm going to have to pay another $310. It's just bizarre to me that if it goes through one company, there's no fee, and if it goes through UPS, there is. So I then tried to reach out to Bored Apes, and this was an interesting point. They don't have customer support. What do you do if there's an issue with your merch? I don't know. I could tag them on Twitter. That's not going to get a reply. There's no contact anything on the website. You do have the Discord, but I don't think they're answering complaints in Discord. So this is an interesting concept for Web3. What happens when you have an issue? Like, I was thinking maybe because I've checked some of the merch out and everyone on Twitter has got it right. It's terrible quality for the Bored Ape merch. There are some items that are fine, but it's pretty poor quality, which they've outsourced to another company, and I'm sure they won't use them again. But what do I do? Do I just say, well, this merch is crap, I don't want it? Maybe I'll just let UPS send it back and they can give me my ape token back. But who do I contact? So it's a strange one with Web3 companies and trying to get in contact with them. So I run a tiny Web3 company. I make sure if someone tags me or NFTs on Twitter, I'm replying. My DMs are always open. We've got Discord with mods there and we've got a customer support ticket ticketing area. But yeah, it's a product I see needs to be created to help with customer support in Web3. And then we can also talk about Gold Ape sales. So there have been 2 in the past week. This morning I woke up and there was a 670 ETH sale, which I think is about 900,000 US. And last week there was another gold sale for 770. Plus, I think there was a combination of some other Bored Apes in there as well. So I think that's quite a steal. When the floor's about 80, 90, you're only paying 8 times the floor for what are the top ones in that collection. But it shows that the market's still there. There are still people buying, and I think these 2 people that bought the Gold Apes have got a pretty good deal in this down market. But yeah, so that wraps up all the Bored Ape stuff. Did you have anything to say?
Most pressing question for our listeners is: are you selling, Steve? We've seen 2 Gold Ape sales. Are you selling?
Not at these prices. Again, I think my minimum amount is going to be 2,000 ETH, and that's when ETH is at least 2 to 3,000 US dollar range. But I just don't see me ever selling it. Well, I do see me selling it maybe in 20 years, if it's $20-50 million sort of thing. But no, especially in this current market, I wouldn't be selling anything.
Yeah. No, that's. I would just add to the ape merch. I had some waiting for me when I got back from the US. I did avoid paying any sort of taxes or whatnot. I probably didn't get as much as you, but I haven't opened everything up yet. But I got to say, the hoodie in particular was horrendous. It was like, I remember seeing someone wrote, it was like cardboard on Twitter. I couldn't agree with them more. It's, you want to feel comfortable and cozy, like my NFTs hoodie and that original one you're wearing.
This one is fantastic. It feels lovely.
It is. And I think that one's going to go down, the one that you're wearing now. And if you're listening to the audio version of this show, Steve's wearing the Bored Ape hoodie that's got the little white tag on the left side of the hood. And I have one of those myself, and they are a great hoodie, really good quality. I think that one will go down as one of the good OG hoodies, but the latest installment has been pretty ordinary. I would agree with you on that. But let's move from all things Bored Apes and move across to some art. Well, we might look back on some Moonbirds and Proof news with that Ravens leak shortly. But one thing we have seen in this bear market is generative art and some of these quote unquote grails that people have assigned value to, that seems like it's not going away. Is, obviously Autoglyphs being the first generative art collection on chain. I think there's 512 Autoglyphs in total. We've had 2 sales in the last couple of weeks. Actually, I should say the last week. I think the floor is up in the 300s now. Maybe someone's dropped it down to 200 since I've looked last. We've also seen Damien Hirst, and I know you've got one of these, Steve, so I want to hear your thoughts in a second. But we've seen X-Copy grifters moving up quite significantly, and we've seen a really big run-up of Chromie Squiggles. So we'll talk about WAGMI United and how that sort of ties into Chromie Squiggles in a second. But from a Damien Hirst perspective, Steve, I believe the deadline, for those that are not aware, that dropped around about 12 or 13 months ago, and essentially you were given the option of keeping the physical or keeping the NFT, and whichever one you don't keep will get essentially burnt. So I was watching
burnt.
Yeah, I was watching a Proof Roundtable discussion with 2 members from Flamingo DAO, Derek Edwards and Pre, for those that know Pre from Flamingo DAO, and they were speakers at a couple of the events I went to in the US, and they were talking about, I think it's at around about 17 or 18% currently, with a couple of weeks to go, of people keeping the physical versus the digital. So we're sort of at almost 80% NFTs and 20% physicals. Where's your head currently at as a holder of the currency?
Yeah, I had flip-flopped a little bit, but I think I knew I was always going to stay as the NFT. it may have changed if I had a floor one. Now, it's hard to get data and stats on these, but of course, any 10K generative has percentages, traits, all this sort of stuff. And mine would be in the top 100. I was very lucky to get one that had nothing but, well, mostly blues. Like there were 4 others that had more blues, blacks, and like it was 3 colors. I like the name of mine as well. And then I kept thinking, well, what would I rather? Would I rather the physical, real Damien Hirst, and as you were saying, 17%, so there's only 1,700 of these, which would be a fairly low edition size for him. That might get to 2,000, maybe 3,000. And then I thought, well, I just think the NFT has a lot more to offer. One, I can still get it on one of these screens anyway, and in my house that I'm going to eventually build, I'm going to have a lot of digital displays, so I could show it anywhere instead of just having the one physical. I think he'll probably do a lot more drops if you own the NFT. So we've already got a free NFT for holding it. I'm sure there'll be whitelists and other things as he builds out Web3 into his whole ecosystem there. And of course, I think NFTs just offer so much more value over a physical in the fact that you can buy and sell much quicker. The market's much more liquid. And yeah, so the advantages of holding the NFT just massively outweigh holding a physical for me. So I'll be holding on to the NFT there.
I tend to agree. I think I'm not a holder. If I was, I would be taking the NFT, even though sort of the scarcer play is on the physical. But I think there's just more flexibility with the NFT, right? Like from everything from setting up your online galleries, if you're into that thing, to integrations that are coming down the pipe that we know with things like Instagram and things like that. So if it's something that you want to show off your artwork to your digital world, your digital sphere, it's right there for the picking. And 2 things that I ordered earlier this week were a crypto arte and a piece by HeartU, an artist that was early with the Proof Collective. So HeartU gave a drop for, I think it was 0.05 ETH, called Emotes. And I loved the emote that I minted on Async back in January. It resonated with me straight away. I don't think I'll ever sell it. So I've actually ordered a canvas version of that, and I'm hoping to actually, rejig the room that I'm currently sitting in and sort of having a nicer backdrop in the coming weeks and months, similar to what you have, Steve, with your NFTs logos
messy
there.
At the moment.
It's a little messy, but look, it's better than my white walls and door here that's behind me. So. I think the NFT gives that sort of more flexibility where you can go into a physical where it's a little bit harder to go the other way.
Yeah, well, the actual physical is very small. I think it was like an A4 or A5 size. So you're looking at something very small on your wall, whereas the NFT, they scanned it in great detail, the front and back. So I could blow it up onto like a 65-inch frame or even bigger, and it will look amazing. To me, it would look better big with all that detail than the small one. So yeah, there were just too many things that said keep the NFT.
I think that is a big factor. I didn't realize how small they were actually. That's interesting. If it's sort of only around A4 size, yeah, you would be wanting something a little bit bigger to show that level of detail, you'd think. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and from a trading perspective, I had tried to get as many as possible when he did drop. I think they were 2,000 or 3,000, which was very affordable for the time. And then they, of course, skyrocketed. I can't remember what the floor was. Maybe 15 ETH they got to.
I think it got up to 16, 17, I remember seeing at one point. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it went back down to 2 or 3 ETH and then has come back up recently. Yeah. But I think the event of the burn is going to be a piece of art in itself. When you're going to burn 7,500 or however many of these real pieces of art that a lot of time and effort has been put into, that is going to be quite amazing to see. Now, if you own a floor one and you want to get rid of it, your best bet is the day before this burn, sell it. That will probably be the highest for a while. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to it. It's going to be a really interesting experience to see how he even plans this burn and what he does. I'm expecting some fireworks and fire, so it'll be very cool to see. And I think it's the end of this month that you've got till.
Yeah. So staying on sort of the generative art run-up of some of these, projects or pieces of art like Chromie Squiggles, we've seen an enormous amount of volume for Chromie Squiggles over the last week or so, in particular. I have been in the market for a squiggle, and I have been very, very close to pulling the pin the last couple of days, and I just feel like I'm looking at them like a deer in headlights at the moment, watching the floor creep up. But I've had a few conversations with a few people, and I'm actually making a little bit more of a bet on some, back to our initial, discussion around markets rallying. I'm still a little bit bearish on where we go in sort of the next 3 to 6 months. I could be wrong, obviously, but I've got some USDC sitting on the sidelines that I would be deploying for a squiggle. So while ETH is running up a little bit and while the floor price is running up, I have decided to keep my powder dry. And I suppose I'm hoping for a little bit of a drawdown once this current run up sort of stops. But you're always playing with fire because maybe the floor resets at a higher price and never comes back down. We've seen that before with certain projects and certain pieces of art. So we'll see. But I do think that Squiggles for me, are going to go down as quite a historically significant project. There's too many significant whales and investors. I saw this while I was overseas as well. There's just a lot of momentum for Squiggles. So I want to get a squiggle in the bag. Obviously not financial advice, but I personally looking at Squiggles pretty closely at the moment. And I would also say let's segue into WAGMI United because...
Well, we'll talk about Squiggles a bit more. I've had my finger over the buy button at 0.6 ETH, 1.4 ETH, 6 ETH, 8 ETH, and I think the floor is now 13 ETH. And I just couldn't bring myself each time. I thought it was too high. I do again think it's too high now at 13 ETH floor. But you are right. They're iconic. If you see a squiggle, you know what it is. You know the backstory. Of course, we're in the NFT space, but it's going to be a very iconic thing in the future. I do also want to get one, and a lot of this other generative art like Fidenzas and that. And I did, again, I've had a lot of WETH offers on Fidenzas that were probably 5 ETH short of getting them when they had that big drop down to about, I think some were selling in the 40,
they were
even high 30, like I think 37 ETH range. And I had WETH bids of 35 ETH on just a lot of them that were up for sale around 50 ETH. Didn't get taken. And of course, they've gone up again as well. One day, it's like we live in this duality where I'm like, I want NFTs to go up, but I also want them to crash to zero so I can buy them all, which just means the price is probably about right at the moment. But let's move on to Chromie Squiggles and WAGMI United. Let's give us a roundup of all of that.
Yeah, look, so WAGMI United is something that I saw sort of, festering around on Twitter and in some Discord conversations that I'm in while I was overseas. And being a pretty hardcore sports junkie, I definitely was something that I was going to jump into. But I got to say, I sort of missed the boat over the last week or so when there was opportunities to sign up for pre-mints to mint one of these. I think it's 12,000 tokens, but what it essentially is to me, it's a new way of sort of outsourcing, or not outsourcing, but running a sports franchise, right? So we're actually seeing, a number of backers with WAGMI United that are trying to take, what is it, a Division 3 or 4 team, Steve?
I believe
Crawley
it's
United.
4, yeah. Crawley
in the EPL, and essentially trying to, I suppose in a way, I don't know if Moneyball is the right analogy, but you're essentially trying to bring this soccer team up to a higher division, and you're trying to do it through Web3 and NFTs and have a raving fan base that actually has some form of ownership within the team by buying these NFTs. So they're minting, I believe, now at 0.35. And I think if you owned Chromie Squiggles, you may get a free mint, I think, from memory. But, well, maybe it's actually just allow list, because if I look at 12,000 supply and there's nearly 10,000 Chromie Squiggles, that's not going to be much of a cash injection. No. So it's probably an allow list spot. And, you know, some of the things I've got in front of me here, the WAGMI United NFT grants you things like special input into the future of the team, you know, limited edition Adidas merch. So, you know, if you've seen the jersey, you know, you've got the Chromie Squiggle on the jersey, and you've got things like scarves and hats. And, you know, we were speaking offline before, Steve, access to IRL events, free tickets to home matches. A lot of these things are like a traditional sports membership, right, to an AFL club or an NBL team or whatever it might be. So they're packaging this up almost with digital perks, physical perks. If you're a sports fan, you know, there's going to be many holders that probably don't care about the soccer team themselves that much. They're speculating on the price and where that might go. But I think this is where we're seeing right now in front of our eyes, like the early stages of what owning a sports franchise might look like, right? And I know you've mentioned that you've sort of looked in, well, what would an NBL team cost, right? And how would you distribute that through sort of NFTs to raise capital?
Yeah, well, the question here is it ownership? You're not getting an ownership stake in the club. You're getting to be a fan here. So, like, I want this to succeed because I do see a future of DAOs owning teams and then building a massive fan base with actual owners. I'll go through a few things here. So you mentioned Moneyball, and we've seen this before happen with Premier League teams, well, English football teams that get to the Premier League. Now, there's a lot of things that tie in here. Preston is one of the owners of WAGMI United. He's an ex-sports bettor like myself. We had two massive sports bettors do this without the NFT part. So Tony Bloom and Matthew Benham, they used to work together. They were massive sports bettors. Like, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in profit they made from sports betting. They both bought soccer teams, English teams, Brighton and Brentford, who are now in the Premier League. And they, of course, sports bettors, well, good sports bettors are really good with numbers, Moneyball, all that sort of stuff. They use stats and everything to take these teams from third division or second division all the way to the Premier League. So it's interesting. It can be done. It requires a lot of money. We've also had a test before and ongoing right now with Futera. And this is the exact same concept, which makes me think that marketing is the key part in NFTs. So Futera has a team, has the club, all the facilities. They're playing games. They're winning. They've got jerseys. They've got everything going. But they managed to sell, I think, 800 of the 10,000 NFTs that give you voting rights on what the team does and everything. They're backed by a big company, Futera, which does trading cards. And it's just strange that it hasn't got the same sort of momentum as WAGMI United. Fair enough, we're in the English league compared to the Thai league, and there'll be a few other things. But yeah, it's a tough one. From what I've read, they paid $5 million for the team. And then you're also limited with teams like this, with gate tickets, merchandise sales, because you've got to pay a lot of money to get players good enough to get you to the next league or to win that league and go. And your only options for most teams are gate sales, merch, food, all that, sponsors. So they're trying to fund it via NFTs and fans and everything. So it's going to be an interesting one, but I don't know. I want it to succeed. I'm not sure going this way of just being a fan and not actually having an investment in the team is going to work. I don't know if you're really going to get that fandom of following a fourth division team just because you own the NFT. Now, if I owned a stake in that team, I'm all in. I'm watching games. I'm trying to get involved. I would be trying to pick up any NFTs that were under market price. But yeah, it's an interesting one. We've got a lot of NFT fan teams anyway, so everyone follows either Barcelona, Real Madrid, Man U, Juventus. So they're sort of teams that aren't physically, you don't need to be physically in that city to be fans of that team. I don't know. But it's a great test, and that's all we're doing in this space. We're running multiple tests, and we're going to see what sticks.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's, we are in an experimental stage still, so I hope that this experiment goes really, really well. It gets me really excited to sort of see these things starting to get off the ground, because even if we just look at the future of what sports memberships will look like, as I look at many of these perks, they do look like a traditional sports membership, but there's just so much extra you can do with NFTs, as we know, Steve. And cross collaborations and things like that. So it's exciting to see these early days, and it'll be funny to look back at this particular conversation, I would say, in the next sort of like 2 to 3 years and sort of see where we are. Why don't we segue, and we'll apologize to any listeners too. I'm not sure how bad that banging's going to come out, but it can be. Steve's neighbours.
I'll try to close it more.
Steve's neighbours are building a new mansion in the. You still live in Beverly Hills, don't you?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So let's.
I think there's a granny flat out the back, and the daughter's moving in. So.
Right. Well, we've got about 10 minutes to go on this show today, because we've both got hard stops as we record this. But we saw a couple of other things we should sort of wrap the show up with. We saw Punk's comic drop. What was it? Comic number 3, I think, last week. Any thoughts on the whole Pixel Vault ecosystem, Steve? Because I know that I don't have a lot of exposure to it. It's always interested me, but also I believe Pixel Vault Sports, which is a new sub-brand of Pixel Vault that got announced at VCon, are actually behind WAGMI United, or heavily involved with WAGMI United. But give me your sort of take on the whole Pixel Vault ecosystem, and did you mint Punk's comic 3?
No, I have not minted any Punks related things, never will. Punk's comic drop 3, just money grab 3. It's a tough one. The whole story with Beanie involved. Fair enough, we got rid of Beanie from this whole Punk's comic, but every single drop just feels like this massive money grab. I remember the Planets drop. I think they took $70 million in on that. The valuation now is probably a few million. I know the price has gone down massively on all of those. This one was more just a gambling comic, as in, I think they were putting up a couple of NFTs, and if you got specific ones in your drop, then you won. So I forget what the mint price was, maybe 0.3. And then a second that you opened your NFT and didn't get a rare NFT, the secondary is like 0.06 or something like that.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just a gamble-based one, which has its place. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of gambling, NFT specifically, and we're all gambling on drops anyway, but this was gambling squared. It just seems they don't know what they're doing. They've got at least $100 million fund, and the only thing I've seen is them release more NFTs to raise more funding. I haven't seen a product, anything. I've seen a couple of comics, and it blows my mind that a comic could raise $100 million. I remember the first comic, it sounded cool to have a comic of the Punks, and then the Bored Ape comic. Really cool. But to raise $100 million and to not show anything apart from we're building a world and everything, and fair enough, we're still early. They might blow our minds. They might have put this money aside and are working their asses off to build something amazing. But you keep seeing pivots. So it was this comic world with the meta heroes, I think, and their Vault. And then they announced at VCon that they're going into sports, which had nothing to do with... So it seems like a rudderless ship at the moment. And it seems like a case of maybe Beanie there would have been better than where it is. But I know there's a lot of fans of it. And I also know there's a lot of people who are in the ecosystem that are just sick and tired of it. But the beauty of this space is there's an NFT for everybody. You go buy what you think's going to do well. I know what I'm staying away from. But again, as I keep going back to, everything's an experiment. I hope they succeed. I hope they build something amazing. It won't worry me if I miss out because I don't believe in that project, but others do. And it really is about community and being able to build that community, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I'm staying away.
All right, so let's really talk about. We've only got a couple of minutes, but there was a leak in the proof ecosystem, and I can't remember if it was. I think it was a trademark for something called
I saw it on Twitter.
The Ravens, right? So it seems like there could be, and I saw a tweet earlier in the week that was essentially saying if oddities are to proof what Bored Ape Kennel Club was, then Ravens could be mutant apes to Mutants. What for the Moonbirds PFP project. So it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. The oddities are revealing in 12 or 13 days. So they are.
What do you think they are?
It says in collaboration with Gremplin, so you've obviously got quite a well-known artist there. I have a few of those that were airdropped. I'm probably thinking of getting rid of one before the reveal, just to give myself a little bit more chromey squiggle room. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure what they're going to be. It's been quite difficult. I mean, even being pretty involved in the Proof and Moonbirds ecosystem, there hasn't been a lot of sort of understanding. My biggest hesitation was selling anything. Could be, as we go down the track with the build out of the Moonbirds ecosystem, if there's potential upside that you've kept your oddity number attached to your Moonbird. So I suppose that's the risk that I play selling one. But that's probably going to be my particular play. But it's going to be interesting in the next couple of weeks to see what happens with that.
My question to you is, let's say Ravens is a mutant style drop, 20,000, might even be more, because Kevin has talked about getting as many people in. We're seeing it with Doodles as well, going to have millions of NFTs. Do you worry about the community not being big enough at the moment to handle another, say, 20,000 NFTs and what that will do to the price? I know Kevin has said he wants to get a lot of people in at very affordable prices. What happens when you can get into the ecosystem for maybe 0.08 ETH? What happens to Moonbird pricing, proof pricing, and everything? Do you have concerns with that?
I think it's always a concern for the OG holders. And I remember having this conversation with someone earlier this week. I think it's a tightrope that project founders have to walk constantly. If, some of these mid-tier projects that we've seen do it, and it's probably more of a reflection of where the market's been too, but, many of the projects that have dropped companions, whether it's a World of Women Galaxy or whatever it might be, we have seen a price drop in the original collection. I suppose the big outlier there is the Bored Ape community, right? Like we saw mutants that sat pretty, maybe around that 3.5 to 4.5 ETH mark for the first month or two after mutants were dropped. But really we've seen an increase in the value of original Bored Apes, and keeping that sort of almost 1-to-4, 1-to-5 price ratio. So it's really hard to think which way it might go. I mean, part of me sort of goes, well, if you're really into the Moonbirds ecosystem or proof ecosystem, similar to if you're a mutant right now, I'm sure there's plenty of mutants that are aspiring to be an OG ape, right? One of the 10,000. So is that the dynamic that potentially plays out for Ravens and Moonbirds, or does it go the other way, like you said, Steve, where there's you're sort of flirting with a little bit of danger that you dilute your original holders? So it's hard to know.
Yeah. Well, I personally think Moonbirds is strong enough and have enough people still wanting to get in that this drop would probably go well and increase. I would buy a Raven if that was the case, that it is like a mutant, to get in. I'm not convinced that a Moonbird's worth 40 ETH or whatever it is now after Ryan bought 600 odd ETH of Moonbirds. But yeah, should we quickly 2-minute wrap of the final two?
Yes. Let's talk. What are we talking? ENS Mania. So we've seen this 999 club. So all the numbers. So
we need a shout out to Daniel Got This or 260.
Yeah, Daniel Got This. Yes.
Like, I do not agree with a lot of his tweets, but he has been so forward-thinking with a lot of this stuff, and he has pushed ENS domains massively. I hope it's paid off for him. I hope he did get a lot of 3-digit domains or whatever. But yeah, sorry, keep going.
No, I met him in person at VCon, actually. But we've also seen the emergence of flags, right? So they're now calling it the 999 Passport Club. I gotta say, I was a DGen the other night. I had to feel something again. I minted about 6 or 7 different ENS names and numbers and things like that for about $7 or $8 total USD, and it was just a great feeling to see that MetaMask transaction confirmed again. So I am the proud holder of Australian flag 247.eth. So if you're in the market for that, let me know. We can do
12 ETH minimum.
Yeah, we can do an OTC deal. But yeah, we should mention that ENS Mania is here for now, at least. So everyone is jumping to sort of get the next hot trend. But, I would think that probably some of these original collections like the 999 Club is probably going to still hold a decent floor price. But some of these other more obscure ones, but you just never know, right? And I would actually say if you want to watch a good video, a good 10-minute video, Juan Carlo buys tokens. His YouTube channel, which is pretty prolific, he did a really good video on ENS Mania the other day. So go in and search for that. But we're probably going to have to wrap up this show, Steve. The last thing I wanted to mention was the World of Women had another drop. What was it called? The capacitors, I think it was called. I saw that was airdropped about 24 to 48 hours ago. So that hasn't been revealed yet from my understanding. So shout out to the World of Women project that seemed to be keeping building. And we saw the Artifact 3D voxels for Clone X's, I believe.
Yeah, I've pressed the button on my headphones and now I'm hearing something else. Hopefully no one is hearing that. But what we're going to... Sorry, with ENS, I laughed at you. I bought day25.eth the other day as well. I also have a story. I'll try to be quick. It was a year ago when I first heard of ENS. I had AFL, MLB, NRL, and a few other .eth. Didn't buy them. I had them in my wallet. Didn't buy them. Thought it was stupid. But yeah, let's talk about all the rest. We can talk about Clone X and that next week, I think.
Yes, let's do that. And let's also give our listeners, we are going to have, I think it's going to be our first guest. It's still probably 2 or 3 episodes away later this month in July. We are going to have the co-founder of Crypto Tax Calculator joining the Ape and Bird show to talk about their product and just all things tax in crypto and NFTs. So we hope that will bring our listeners some good value. So we look forward to that show in a couple of weeks. So that's probably it for this week, Steve. We'll wrap it up. Good to chat. And we'll be back next week with episode 10.
Awesome. We made it to 10. See you, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.